Hey everyone, I'm your host, James Jackson, and this is ARCast. Join me each episode as we shine the spotlight on a category management or shopper insights professional doing compelling work in the trenches. If you're ready, let's dive right in. I'm excited because I have here today Alicia Reed. She's a space planning professional and she's been doing great work. And so, Alicia, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, James.
Yeah. So if you've listened before, we're going to talk a lot about your career. That's why we brought you in. But before we do that, I have a kind of a curveball question for you.
Oh boy. Okay.
when someone looks at your LinkedIn profile, they obviously see that you've done space planning, but there's also this esports franchise. So I'd love to hear what that was about or what it is about. And
Yeah. So esports, right? For those who don't know, it's effectively competitive gaming. And the franchise that I owned was Valhalla Esports Training. And that franchise is, if you think about club sports, so baseball, basketball, your classical sports as you may think about it, with your kids, you can do the same thing with gaming. And the crazy part is that gaming is an up and coming industry.
yes,
If you didn't know that before, you're welcome. I just told you right now. It's billions of dollars in sponsorships. So think about, like, obviously you'd have like Razer and Logitech, those classical sponsors that you may think about, but also Microsoft, also sports teams. There's a Valhalla out in Vegas that has professional basketball players, football players. It's crazy the amount of endorsements, the amount of money, like competitions. I think for Fortnite, they had like multi-million dollar prizes just for duos. It's crazy. It's a crazy market for both kids and adults. And my business was training you so that you could be successful in that arena.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. I think they even have NIL deals now with some of the esport players too. So yeah, it's definitely a big deal. So I just had to ask something to kind of break the ice here. So now we're ready to talk about your career. So
Sure.
If you're ready, let's get in the trenches. Let's get in the trenches. If you could talk a little bit about college, why you chose the degree that you chose, that would be great.
Awesome. So in college, I studied econ at the University of Maryland. Go Terps, okay? The neat part about econ is that it's not just about numbers, but it's more so about the behavior under scarcity. And so, which some people may or may not know, right? They may just think, oh, the economy, oh, politics. No, it's literally how people react to specific scarcity conditions, right? And that is what kind of like brought it to me, like why it kind of spoke with me, is the fact that I can use that logic anywhere. It doesn't just have to be retail. It could be healthcare. It could be like auto. Literally, I could bring it anywhere. And I thought that was super neat. I have my MBA in data analytics. So you could say I'm a numbers girl. I do like numbers. My college experience, for the most part, is pretty classical, I would say. Anybody who's been to college, you know the vibes of what's going on. The only thing that may be a little bit different is that I was married to a service member. I got married literally in the middle of college, and so he deployed multiple times. The difficult part about that is, like, you're married, so you can't do some of that college stuff. But he'd be in the middle of the ocean somewhere. He can't tell me where he is. I don't know what time zone. So he's trying to call me at all times of day, all times of night. And I could be trying to sleep for an exam the next day. Like, different stressors.
Wow.
One could say.
Sure. Wow. Okay. So did you move a lot afterwards, or how did that?
So met him while I was in Maryland. I'm from Maryland as well. So
Okay.
he was stationed in Maryland. And so that's where I met him. And
Sure.
then I wasn't going to like give up my career or my
Sure.
degree because he was in the military. I don't care.
Sure.
Like,
Okay.
so he PCS to San Diego, so literally the other side of the country.
Wow.
And we'd visit. It does make it easier to visit when you're married because
Yeah.
then he gets BAH, and then that, and so instead of like an E2 with a minimal salary, now you
Yeah.
have a housing allowance to kind of help with flights back and forth and things of that nature.
Sure.
We were like, we love each other, so it's fine. It's fine.
Nice. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, I didn't know that. That's a very interesting start. So you have your college career, you're married,
Mm-hmm.
you graduate,
Uh-huh.
and your first job. Can you talk about that opportunity, how you found it, why you chose it?
Yeah. So my first job was at Sears. I needed something mobile because I'm married to a military guy, right?
Yeah.
I needed something where I could just pick my job up and start it
Mhm.
somewhere else. So at first I was in San Diego. So after I graduated college, I ended up moving to where he was in San Diego.
Sure.
And then worked at Sears for a while in El Cajon. And then when he got out of the military, we moved to San Antonio. And at the time, Sears was everywhere.
Sure. Yeah, they were.
So at the time, it was a fairly stable job.
Right.
So I was able to pick back up in San Antonio, and so I got a nice little range of things I got to do at Sears.
Okay. Awesome. So talk about it. What were you responsible for while at Sears?
Yeah. So like with any retail job, right? Responsible for a lot. But my title was technically called an MCA, basically a merchandising associate. So I'm executing things on the floor. And I like to say my job was to merchandise on the fly. We were given very loose guidelines and told to get stuff from the back, or in El Cajon's case, it was actually like they had a whole underground warehouse under the mall. So it was like, get the stuff from the back and bring it to the floor. And you can't sell it if it's not on the floor, right? So like it was stack them high and let it fly type of concept back then. My main category was men's apparel. You could occasionally find me in women's soft lines and on a very rare occasion in lingerie. Then when we moved to San Antonio, they didn't have any apparel jobs at the Sears that closest to me. So I ended up in tools, very different category. Now, tools is heavily planogrammed. So like you have basically everything is planogrammed versus apparel where it's like, all right, we need these SKUs on the floor, merchandise them how it looks best and make sure the pricing and signage is correct with whatever's on the display. Now, with it being way more planogram driven, it's more about presentation standards. So the minimum shelf presentation, making sure you order any out of stocks, and then kind of setting up the displays. So typically within tools at the time, if you've ever been into a Sears, you have like some, especially around seasonal. So you'll have like for summer, you might have the little patio sets that we need to set up for the tents or like all that stuff. If it's holidays, we're setting up giant like Santa Clauses and like all that stuff.
Right.
So it's very different in tools than it is in apparel, but all good experience for kind of where I ended up later in my career.
Sure. So you talked about planogramming. When did you start learning like JDA and software like that? Was that in that role?
No, it was actually at Petco is where I started, and then
Ah,
that continued to pull through to GPM because both of my managers heavily involved. Here's the funny part, right? So one of my managers, so my manager at Petco, she used to work at Sears corporate, and so she
got it.
was heading up the space planning team over there. Well, I don't know if she was heading it up, but like she was on the space planning team over there. So the planograms I was setting on the floor were made by her, right? And then
Ah,
but I didn't know that until I started working at Petco. I'm like, oh, that's
yeah,
super neat. That's super neat. And then at GPM, my boss at GPM, she used to be a solution architect at Blue
sure.
Yonder before she was my boss. And so like I got to learn a bunch from her as well. And they also knew one another
Sure.
from both working at Blue Yonder at one point in
Okay.
time. So I
Okay.
learned a lot from them.
From
Specific,
them.
yes. And so my specialty is category management, their category management suite. So that includes ProSpace, ProFloor, and some of their assortment tools.
Okay. So let's go back then. So you were at Sears, you were doing merchandising, you're in the store.
hmm
What caused you to move over to Petco?
So I started as a temp, and the role was called store designer for one of Petco's major resets. They often picked up temps to train and then kind of just crank out floor plans. And they picked me up because in high school, I was in a CTE program for 3 years and I learned AutoCAD, Revit, Inventor. So all the like neat modeling and architecture software. And if you let me, I want to go off on a tangent for a sec because store designer means different things to different companies. And for some of the listeners here, floor planning or macro space can sit within construction, real estate, store design, or it can sit within merchandising. And for Petco, it was just working on splitting out the merchandising aspect of floor planning from the design aspect. So essentially, they didn't have the floor planner job description even established
Mm.
yet. And a lot of the work was creating the flow and alignment with the strategy set by the category manager, the vendor, the buyer, the merchant, whoever, right?
Sure.
And well, I suppose I was doing something right during my temp time. And I was hired into the floor planning team a after all that reset work was finished. So a very small but mighty team because we had at the end of the day, we ended up with five of us plus a manager for about 1,500 stores nationwide, which is a lot, a lot of stores.
So go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say for like that my day to day job, I ended up continuing to do reset work for my categories and flowing new and remodel stores. And if we make the call back to college, remember that I'm a bit of a numbers girl. So over time, I position myself to do more and more with the data. The fun thing about floor plans are that they contain so much data and drive functionality and reporting if you let it. So my boss regularly gave me tasks and challenges to encourage me to dive deeper into Blue Yonder's language, if you will. So the formulas, the functions, reporting, highlights, kind of how everything connects. And I really loved that aspect the most out of my space planning endeavors, which came in handy when I got into consulting for those system implementations.
Sure.
So I could take that knowledge and help other businesses kind of create um, reporting and formulas and things that would be useful for them that their current team may not even know what to do with. So it was great. It was a great experience. Eventually, that boss moved over and became a solution architect for Blue Yonder. So very fun stuff.
Wow. So talk about the transition, and I'm just curious. So you talked about menswear, um, lingerie, now your tools, and then you go over to pet.
Yeah.
Was that a tough transition? Were there a lot of similarities? Can you talk about, that point where you're moving into maybe a different channel?
Well, I would say that from soft lines to tools, it's not really like a ton of difference. I would I would say it's different in the fact that soft lines and men's is more visual merchandising, so it's more about the display, getting the product on the floor and displaying it in an appeasing manner versus a category like tools where you are working with planograms, it's very structured. And then when you go into pet, right, pet being that specialty retailer, you get a mix of both and then some because it's effectively a mini grocery or department store, but for pets. You have live kitchens, vets, fresh food and coolers, bakery, non fresh consumables. So, like the little treats, you got apparel, toys, health, auto, potty, bedding, furniture, seasonal.
Yeah, that's right.
So all types of different departments and categories on top of actually having live animals in the store. So it's fun to have this level of variety and responsibility in one plan, and you get the majority of that when you're doing new and remodel stores, right? Which is not something I was doing at Sears. Uh, so you get to touch and kind of impact and influence and learn all different parts of the business.
Interesting. So you were at Petco for a while. You're now, in a team. You're doing planogramming. You're doing all of that, and then you also mentioned GPM, and
Yep.
I am not familiar with GPM. What is GPM?
So GPM Investments is effectively like an investment portfolio, right? So they hold a
Yeah.
large portfolio of convenience stores, affectionately called C stores.
Yeah.
And their growth is mainly driven by acquisition, whereas
Hmm.
I was used to growth being driven by new and remodels.
Yes.
Now, I'll tell you something that I learned at GPM because I was also a space planner there, but
Yeah.
that can mean a lot to different people, right?
Yes. Yes.
So it's a lot easier to keep merchandising standards and category strategy intact when you can build the way that you want to. So if I'm
Mm,
building from the ground up, I build the store to match whatever strategy I'm doing at that
sure.
time. When you are doing and working in a business that mainly runs off of hyper localized acquisitions, they're going to have different layouts, they're going to have different brands
Yes.
and branding, fixtures, different levels of data. So, like, if everything is built and done within the Petco ecosystem, you
Hmm.
have like a
Hmm.
level of consistency there. When you're at a place that acquires versus building new, you're going to run into a lot of a lot of different levels of data. So one chain might have had floor plans and drawings and pictures and like a
Yeah.
slew of things that
Yeah.
they had that came with the sale. For the next store, maybe it's run by like a little mom and pop, like somebody just decided to open 2, 3 gas stations and GPM acquires it. Completely different.
Mm.
Everything's different. They don't have floor plans. What do they need floor plans for? Like,
Sure.
they don't have floor plans.
Sure.
They don't have planograms. They have vendors that come in and do all their planograms. So it's like
Okay.
that level of data between the two
Yes.
and like what is needed to actually run inventory
Yeah.
is very
Oh, yeah.
different. Yeah. So at Petco, we ran inventory off of our floor plans. So the item eligibility and things was running off of floor plans. At GPM, part of the reason I got brought on is so that we could build the floor plans from scratch and then and the
Mm.
planograms and then turn around and connect as we went and built those floor plans, we would connect them once we were 100% sure these are accurate. We're good to go. We did both front
Sure.
and back of store. So like in the little kitchens,
Oh,
if they
wow.
had like a little subway or something attached, we're doing that too. We're doing back rooms. We're drawing department lines.
Wow.
We're all over it. We're all over it. We were
Wow.
down to the napkins on on the food bars at the like it's crazy. It was crazy work.
Oh my goodness. So before I go on,
Yeah.
because some people that are listening may not know the difference. Can you share what is a floor plan versus a planogram?
Oh, all right. So think of a floor plan as you traditionally would, right? Like if you in any other industry outside of retail, you would think floor plan, house. All right, the house floor plan is telling you where the bedroom is, where your living room is, where all these key parts of your store are located.
Sure.
Well, same thing for a floor plan in retail. Now, depending on the type of floor plan you're doing, so like if it's dominantly apparel, it'll be closer to that residential example that I just used, where it's going to be instead of bedroom, living room, it'll be men's, women's, boys.
Sure.
Like it'll be like on a grander scale where it's just like floor pad or like square footage.
Sure.
Versus a retailer maybe closer to a Petco or something like that, where it'll be a little more precise, where it's telling you, hey, this is where your planograms are going to go. So let's talk about the planogram. A planogram is basically a plan or a visual representation of products on a shelf or on a display or on wherever the product is sitting. It's the visual representation of that. And so when you're in the store and you're setting, you would be setting a planogram or like a mockgram or whatever your place calls it, right? You're setting this image that you see in front of you on the fixture that is in front of you, whatever that fixture may be. Whereas with floor planning, we take those planograms, like those blocks, and sometimes it's built by brand, sometimes it's built by use case. Like I said earlier, like we had like a potty planogram at Petco, like so like you don't. It's all dependent on kind of the strategy, the category strategy on how that planogram is built, and then from there, how we're merchandising it on the floor plan. So like, how do things flow together? You don't want to put like expensive clothing right next to super cheap clothing, or cereal of like own cereal, like 4-foot blocks of cereal next to something completely random. Like, I don't know, pet. So you have to I guess you could say that floor is macro space planning. So think of it store and then blocks within the store. And then space planning is more micro. Yeah. What's within those blocks? What's on the shelf or display or fixture?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. No, I didn't want to assume for anybody who was listening that, because floor plan hasn't come up, I don't think, in any episode. So I wanted to make sure that.
Shame on you.
So let's go back to GPM for a second. And you talk about the comparison, Petco, built from the ground up, very easy, kind of similar stores. How difficult was it? And how many iterations of planograms potentially did you have to do for all these different convenience stores?
That's fun. We literally did different planograms for each one of the coolers in the stores, because the coolers are crazy work.
Yeah.
Let alone actually getting the SKU correct. But yeah, we built different planograms for each one of the coolers in the store. But
Wow.
the positives for C-store, right, is that it's a much smaller footprint.
True. True.
So your center store is not a lot. It's less than 100 linear feet,
Okay.
easy normally. So like that's good. That's positive. You can knock out. You can knock
Yeah.
out uh, whole convenience stores. I think we used to do like 3 or 4 a day.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, per
So that
person.
helps
3 or 4 a
scale it.
day per
Okay.
person. And that
Okay.
was just fixturing and floor plans and stuff like that. And then we had like
Sure.
shell planograms to kind of hold the space for us
Sure.
until we made the planograms. Because at GPM, the floor planners and the space planners, did both jobs. So you're making the
Got it.
planogram and you're making the floor plan.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're at GPM. How did you stumble upon Deloitte?
So I didn't exactly stumble upon Deloitte. I was
Okay.
specifically brought to Deloitte.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. There's positives in having friends in other places, right? So one of my old bosses had already went to come work at Deloitte, and she realized that there was a need for somebody with some space planning expertise to come on over and kind of help out on a particular merchandising transformation. It was a pretty big transformation. It was
Sure.
probably like tens of millions of dollars at the time. So it was a pretty big deal. And so she needed a partner to kind of help out
Sure.
over in that space that understands space planning and assortment. And I just so happened to fit the bill. And others at Deloitte thought I also fit the bill. So I took
Nice.
that as a compliment.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you make another transition. This one's a little different. So you've been working with retailers or connected to retail. Now you're in a consulting firm.
Yes.
How's that different? How's that similar?
It is a very different world. I'd say if you like to travel or if you get bored easily, it's great. It's great because you have a bunch of different projects. It
Sure.
is a little dog eat dog
It is.
out there because unlike a traditional retailer or CPG, consulting works off of contracts. So much like a contracting world, you only have work if work is sold, right?
Sure.
So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sold by you at the consulting firm. Like there's a reason you have levels to the consulting firm. Your higher levels are typically the people who are selling the work. And then everyone kind of below kind of falls in line to execute the work. I'd say it's also good. Consulting's good if you like to understand things end to end. So very often when you're in retail, you kind of get stuck in your own like little department because you're just so busy working your day job. Like there's always so much stuff to do. And so you're constantly working your day job that you don't really have a lot of great opportunity to see what this impacts up and downstream for you and for others. And so being in consulting allows you to kind of focus and think about the end to end because that's normally the type of problem that we're solving as a consulting firm. We're trying to solve the big picture problems.
Yes.
Like, do you have a huge operational issue that needs to be handled? Or is this something that's just a process? We just need to change up your process so that we can get you more standard. I think a lot of the time people, especially space planning professionals, right? They'll go to a retailer and stay there for like 15 years. And so like, your retailer inside out, the processes, all that great stuff, but you have no idea what everybody else in the industry is doing.
Sure.
And just because your retailer is doing it does not mean that's the best way of doing it, but you wouldn't know that. You wouldn't
Right.
know that. So that's why you have consulting firms sometimes to bring it in and also to
Hmm.
kind of help push an agenda.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you talked about projects. What kind of projects did you work on? I mean, it's kind of interesting because I was in consulting, um, but to hear somebody in space planning at a consulting firm, I'm just wondering, like,
yeah,
what kind of engagements were you involved in? What did you do with those projects?
so it's probably different depending on the firm you're at, right?
Hmm.
So Deloitte likes big projects,
Hmm.
and so that's what that's what I was doing. So normally I'm tacked on to like an ERP implementation. So if you're upgrading or moving to SAP or
Hmm.
S4HANA or Oracle, something like that, then and you just so happen to
Sure.
be upgrading
Sure.
your merchandising stuff. So if you need to upgrade your Blue Yonder or whatever software you have, um, that might be where I come in. Or if we need to figure out how to get that data, that merchandising data into the new data lake or something like that, then that's that's where I come in.
Got it. Got it. So did you work, you were still working on retailer projects and things like that? Was that your main focus, even with the ERP portion of it?
Yes, I was
Okay.
still working with mainly retailers. I did go like a little rogue there because they didn't always keep me busy with merchandising transformations. Not everybody's doing
Okay.
merchandising transformations all of the time. I also
Okay.
got to do some great work in virtual reality, some
Mm.
research proof of concepts, along with some specifications for a global esports event. Um, and it may seem unrelated, but as we talked about earlier, I owned an
Yeah.
esports franchise, so
I
they
was
were
like,
able,
what?
yeah, so they were able to utilize some of my skill set for that particular project. So it was very cool to really get into. And if anybody wants to talk to me about that, more than
Sure.
happy to talk
Sure.
offline.
Sure. So and I'm going to throw a question in without prepping you at all.
Yep.
What makes a good space planner?
Hmm. The ability to be flexible.
Okay. Can you expound on that? What do you
Yeah,
mean?
totally. So the thing about retail and CPG, like any type of
Hmm.
work like this, is you have a bunch of competing priorities
Mm.
coming from both up and downstream.
Yeah.
So priorities that might be coming from the top is broader strategy transformation. Like we're
Hmm.
doing strategy stuff. So like at Petco, when we decided to go artificial free, that was like
Mm.
CEO top level. We're doing this in all of our stores. We're pulling out all the bad stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
disregard what that does to the everybody downstream, but okay. We're executing on strategy now, right? We're doing what we're paid for. Um that has to trickle through category managers. How do they want to like bring that to life in the store?
Yeah.
And then how do we want that to look on the shelf? And what does that do to the priority of the products that are already in stores? So if we had natural brands that have been there since the beginning of time and they've been great partners to us, are they keeping their same footage? Are they shrinking in
Hmm.
footage? Do they get in cap space? Do they get so like those types of priority decisions need to be made. And
Hmm.
then so you have all that coming at you. And then so then you have to mock something up. You have to like, all right,
Yeah.
here's based off of what you just told me and what brands can sit beside one another and how big they can actually be. This is what that looks like in a store. This is what it looks like. Yay or nay to this. And
Okay.
they're like,
Yeah.
and you absolutely may get like a yay or like, but more than likely after your first attempt, you're gonna get a nah, I don't like how that looks. Or like, why can't we do X, Y, Z? And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, if we did
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, now you're getting downstream coming back up to you.
Yeah.
Like, so they're like, oh, why can't we just break this planogram and like put it on the wall or put it around the other side of the gondola? And we're like,
Mm.
well, people can't find it.
Yeah.
Two, you can't set certain things you can't set. So let's take dog food, for example. A bag of dog food is as big as like it,
Yeah.
especially in your bigger sets of dog food, not your little tiny bags, but your big bags of dog food. It's going to take up the amount of space it takes up. Or cat litter, something. It's just going to take up
They're
the amount of
big.
space it takes up.
Yeah.
And the product isn't necessarily made to exactly fit on like whatever size fixture you have. They didn't build the bags to fit on your fixture. They built
Sure.
it to carry the amount of product they need.
Yes.
So if you start breaking and snaking and doing all types of craziness, that's going to either require you to make more planograms.
Sure.
And this is where you start to get store specific, right? Or we need to adjust priorities to make a flow that fits the requirements coming from both up and downstream.
God.
So like something that they can execute, but still fits guidelines.
Sure. Sure.
And you need to be flexible in order to do that.
Yeah, and I've worked with space planners. Sometimes I feel bad for them because you're like maybe not involved in the conversation, or you're getting bad information, whatever. Yep. So I do have a follow-up question.
Sure.
What would make a space planner's job easier?
Definitely being brought into the conversation earlier. I think that's kind of key. And then also the space planner being supported, which I mean, it sounds weird maybe, but I think a lot of the push and pull, like a lot of the irritation or like friction between space and other departments is the fact that we're just supposed to accept all this information being told to us.
Sure.
And then when we push back on it, it does not, like that same acceptance is not given to us.
Got it.
And there's a reason we're pushing back. If we could just fit everything exactly as everybody wants us to, then there would be no problems. But the reason you're even hearing from us is because something doesn't work and we're trying to communicate that to you, and we need you to bend somewhere because we aren't at the level where we can make that decision. And
sure.
we have other things y'all need to figure it out so that we can execute and move on. We got lots of stores to do.
Yeah.
We got lots of stuff to do. On top of new and remodel, on top of resets, on top of come on, make a decision so we can execute it and we can keep moving, because we have to do floor plans and planograms. Planograms you can wait a little bit later because you can create shells effectively and then swap those out.
Sure.
But floor plans, those need to be done way early so that we can put planograms on them. So
yeah, true.
We're doing it ideally a couple months out. Ideally.
Okay. That's good to know. I'll end with this. We have a space planning community, and I now can see how they band together because you guys are all in the same fight, right? And so you kind of hear that through line, but I don't think anybody's articulated what you said, where the support piece. Like, hey, we do need to push back, but it's to benefit the business. Yeah. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't think it was of value.
Yes. 100%.
And so that's a very interesting take. So last thing for you, if anybody's been reading, Deloitte and a lot of the other firms have really been under duress, I guess I would say, with, Doge and all these other things. So you're currently kind of looking for other opportunities. What are you looking for?
Good question. I'm looking for stability. I have
Mm,
a family with two young kids. I'm not moving from San Antonio.
sure.
I am not doing anything on commission only. I, I
Okay.
need regular income.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still looking for ways to grow my skill set. So roles in category management, business analyst, project management,
Yeah.
both within CPG and retail
Yeah.
would be of great appeal to me.
Sure.
I'd also be happy to help ARC out in fleshing out some of the space planning content,
Yeah.
along with expanding and defining the strategy around education and advocacy. So,
Sure.
I'm just putting that out there. I have strong, I have strong points of view on
Really?
those topics. Yes. So, I believe I could add some value there as
Awesome.
well. So,
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, we've been in the trenches for quite a while. If you need to, take a breath, take a drink, and let's come up for air. Finally, coming up for air. For someone who has heard what you've talked about, and they're like, yeah, I'm interested in space planning. That seems really cool. You're really involved. What recommendations would you give for someone who's considering it, or maybe even in space planning, and they're saying, how could I be better?
that's a good question. So the community is small, and even though it seems like it's big, your peer at one company is your boss at another, and your old director is now a VP, an SVP, a COO. So
Sure.
wherever you go, your job is to leave a good impression of the work you do and the
Mm,
attitude you bring. Right now, there isn't a well-defined path to getting into this career or how to progress through it, as I'm going through right now. And so you only have others' experiences with you to help
mm.
push the narrative of your skills from one company to another.
Awesome. Awesome. That's really good. Never thought of it that way, but yeah, you're right. And it is definitely, I mean, it's a community for sure, and a band of brothers and sisters. But thanks for that. I think that's super instructive for people who are, again, either in the middle of it, like, okay, how do I define my path? Or
Yep.
those who are considering it and saying, okay, what does it look like, and how do I do well in this career? So, Alicia, it's been awesome having you on the podcast. Thank you for all your insights and for sharing your career.
Yeah, thanks, man. I'd love to talk to people about it. So
Awesome.
hopefully I was helpful to somebody.
You were. We're sure you were. All right. Well, you've just listened to another amazing episode of ARCast. Please look forward to more interesting people in the weeks to come. And also, please don't forget to share ARCast with your colleagues. So if you have feedback, topic suggestions, or you want to appear on the show, please go to www.catman.global/ARCast. Just a need for you to scroll down to the bottom. There's a submission form down there. Just need to fill it out. It comes directly to me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And is recorded at Studio Xerxes in Minnesota. Our theme music was brought to you by Bryant Lowry. And also a special thanks to my friends at the Association of Retail and Consumer Professionals for their promotion and management. Well, that's it for today. I'm signing off. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on our next episode. Bye.